check 1 2.
All right, I'll do the sound checks here. All right, now you've heard the music from Inappropriate Earl from day one. Has been the song "Tough," the band "Tough," and the song "Forever Yours," which was on Dial MTV. I mean, Carson Daly was pumping it out back in the day. And my next guest, he's a repeat guest here. I don't have a lot of repeat guests on Inappropriate Earl, but this guy is the singer of that song. You know him, you love him, as the CEO of MetalSludge.tv, the torchbearer for 80s metal in 2016, the singer of the band Tough, which has had more lineup changes than Leonard Skinner. Put your hands together for the one, the only, one of the original sponsor of Inappropriate Earl, Stevie Rachelle.
Earl, that was an amazing intro. I was about to go to the store and get something to eat because I thought you were going to go on for another 15 minutes.
But you deserve it, though.
Hey, thank you very much. And out of the box, I see you are rocking the Stephen Piercy mic knuckles right in the studio.
The second sponsor of Inappropriate Earl. By the way, September 30th at the Whiskey, if you're out and about on the Strip, Stephen Piercy will be playing around 11 o'clock. I hope they have a better business plan than they did last time, because I went up to the cashier.
Right.
And the guy looks at me and goes, "Do you have a ticket?" I'm like, "No, I want to buy one." You know, and I hand him $20. She's like, "No, just go in." I'm like, "No, but I don't have a ticket. I want to make sure the bass player gets $20."
Right.
The great Matt Thorne from Mickey Rat.
Matt Thor from Rough Cut and Jailhouse, but more importantly, Mickey Rat.
And they just let me in for free. So, you know, see these bands, some of these bands wonder why they don't make any money.
Fun fact about Matt Thor actually engineered, and I will give him co-production quality credit. Matt engineered and co-produced American Hair Band by Tough.
Which was, tell the, now I know you were on a while ago. Explain to my audience.
About, what is it, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, but my audience has short-term memory.
Right, okay.
What was American Hair Band? American
Hair Band was a track that I released in 2001. So that's 15 years ago. And it fastly became I guess you could say a little bit of a global hit, so to speak, in modern day terminology, that it got played everywhere. It was getting played on terrestrial radio, but it was also getting played on all the digital sharing outlets. Well, at that point, I don't know, none of the streaming stuff existed, but Napster was coming into play, and they were so a lot of younger crowd going, "Wow, that song about Tommy Lee spinning his sticks is cool." You know, we're saying, "Shout, shout at the devil again, shout, shout at the devil, my friend, shout, shout, never letting it end, shout, shout, shout."
Well, you're singing in key, so that automatically disqualifies you from singing with Motley Crue. I was at their last concert. It's weird when Vince would put his microphone. I was in the front row. He'd put his microphone basically over my head for the crowd sing along, but yet you still heard his vocals.
Yeah, they're probably running a fair amount of tracks and loops, but they're Motley Crue, and it is what it is. So,
well, the amazing thing about that show was.
Are you talking New Year's Eve?
Yeah.
New Year's Eve or the night before? New Year's Eve.
Actually, I stand corrected. I was not at their last show. I was at the last show Alice Cooper opened up for them.
Oh, okay.
Because the great Nita Strauss on guitar for Alice had invited me and my, at the time, lady friend down. And like Motley Crue, Nikki Sixx had a cannon gun that shot fire. So as he's on the stage facing the crowd, shooting this fire gun out over the audience's head, they're dropping confetti at the same time. And I'm like, does anyone see a problem with this
with some girls in the front row with hair sprayed up hair? Like, there could have been some singeing going on.
So I thought that was funny, but it's the 80s, and they're the Jew in me was like seeing Tommy Lee's roller coaster drum kit go over the crowd. It's like, how they get insurance for this?
Right.
And I'll give them this. It was quite a spectacle.
I actually went on New Year's Eve.
At Staples Center.
At Staples Center.
See, I was at the Pond.
Right.
And how was it New Year?
I hadn't seen Motley Crue probably since the 80s. Honestly, I think the last time I saw them live was the Dr. Feelgood tour. And, I saw the previous tours. I saw Shout at the Devil, Theater of Pain, Girls, 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 and the Dr. Feelgood tour, which, even by that point, I was already in Los Angeles and Tough was together for, a handful of years. I'd kind of lost my fascination, infatuation, just Motley Crue is God kind of thing, which I had when I was 18 and 19 and 20. But, and when I found out that they were on, tickets were like on the StubHub and stuff for like $31.99 on New Year's Eve and the day before, people were like, oh, I got my tickets for $35 at like 4 that afternoon. I was like, if I can find a couple tickets for literally nothing, I'll go with my buddy. And I did. Bought tickets at like 2 or 3 o'clock. And I think it was like not even $80. It was like $75 for 2 tickets. They were in the nosebleeds, but I just wanted to go and check it out. I literally drove there. We went in, watched the show, looked at a bunch of crazy people, got done, got in my car and drove home. And I thought, well, I want to get home before all the complete nut jobs are out drinking and driving and people are getting hit by cars. And so I was back home by 1 or 1:30 and in bed.
Well, speaking of shows and the crowd and the maniacs, you last week on my birthday, September 17th, were at the Hair Nation Music Festival, which might be, correct me if I'm wrong, the last metal concert at Irvine Meadows.
I would say it's the last metal one because somebody said, is this the last concert? And I said, no, because I think this weekend is like Garbage and
I think Gwen Stefani.
Yeah, like,
is the last.
Exactly. So there's a couple of other concerts there, but it's the very end of the end, and that was the last Hair Nation hair kind of show. Wow, nice. So it was a good time. A lot of bands, a lot of people, all different people up and down the totem pole and the ladder of success, from the smaller bands to the mid-level, and a couple of A-list singers out there with their product, meaning Vince Neil and Bret Michaels, and everybody got along. Everybody had a good time.
Now, why wouldn't does Bret Michaels? Because the business end of music better than most, because you've been doing it 30 years. Does Bret Michaels just make more money basically playing Poison songs with his solo band than playing with Poison?
I would guess, because he's the sole guy, he's definitely probably making more than if it was playing with Poison and it was being split 4 ways, do
you think his thinking is, well, why play with Poison and split everything 25% or whatever their breakout is? I'll just play with these 4 dudes and make 80%.
Here, I recently talked to somebody about this, and it's like they were asking me about my thoughts on, Axl getting back with Slash and Duff, and why isn't Izzy involved? And Izzy tweeted something like they didn't want to split the dough equally, so see you later, And then people talked about Bret and Poison and Blotzer and Rat and all these different kind of, configurations of products where one guy's out doing it. And, as far as the Bret thing's concerned, here's what I think. Poison was a band from the get-go, and there was 4 guys, and I'm pretty sure it was a 4-way split for the first 20, 25 years. However, when a lot of this stuff, meaning the hair band industry, the bands, the music, the MTVs, the radio play, the record sales, all went away, there's a lot of guys, and some who had a lot of money, socked away, kind of stepped to the side and just went on living life. At some point, I remember, we all remember, that in probably even the late 90s, Bret Michaels started doing solo shows. Bret Michaels of Poison. And he was playing D-list markets. He was playing, Escanaba, Michigan on a Wednesday night in a club that holds 350 people on a stage that's, smaller than Palladino's. And he was doing those shows. And I know this because I know some of the guys that played in cover bands that opened up for him. And I remember us reporting on stuff as well on Metal Sludge, where Bret would be like sitting outside a bus or an RV or a van in the cold, in the rain, and signing autographs for whatever 60, 80, 100 fans were there at 1 a.m. And so he did that for years. And I don't think he was getting 30 or 50 grand at those shows. I'm thinking he's probably getting 3,500 or something, you know? And so Brett continued to do that. And then when somebody offered him this, you know, and I say this because that's what everybody called it, this goofy idea like, hey, we're going to do Flavor of Love, only we're going to do it with a rocker guy, and we're going to put you on a TV show with a bunch of girls. They're all going to vie for your love, and they're going to, you know, you're going to pick one. It's going to be your girlfriend. Like, and how quirky was that in the beginning? But that show, you know, was another step of reality TV that kind of started to launch him up the you know.
It did help him.
The status.
And it did help Poison, I guess.
Absolutely. And so there was some Poison tours along the way, but Brett continued to promote himself. He didn't call it Poison, even though he was playing Poison songs. I know that he was doing, you know, the Kiss cover and the Lynyrd Skynyrd cover.
Which Kiss cover?
I don't know, like Rock All Night or something, which Poison had covered. But he continued to put himself out there, and even in quote unquote low rent situations, you know, he probably didn't have to go play Escanaba, Michigan on a Wednesday for $3 or $4 grand, but he did, you know, in front of a few hundred people and probably jammed with the local guitarist guy that got up there and, you know, played a Kiss riff with him. So the fact that Brett did that and then threw himself in that cable TV show, and then, you know, started endorsing everything from dog collars to whatever. He continued to keep himself out there. And at one point, his brand was valuable enough that they even put him on The Apprentice, which was a pretty, you know, pretty next level major network show, obviously featuring, you know, a major presidential candidate right now. And then obviously he even won it, you know, so Brett positioned himself and continue to fly that flag and get out there with that headband on and his cowboy hat and sing those songs. And so if at this point there is a value for Poison, I think he's in the driver's seat. He's worth more than a quarter. Just like Axl with Guns N' Roses, you know, he went out and did Chinese Democracy, did multiple tours that were like partially filled arenas and had various guitarists from Bigfoot to Bumblefoot to Chickenhead and Buckethead and
Bigfoot.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, he had a whole list of guys that came in and out of the group, and he continued to fly the flag of Guns N' Roses and took the beating of why is he doing this? It's not the same. Well, now that they've all come full circle, or at least the big three have with Slash and Duff, and someone like Izzy says, hey, they didn't want to split equally. I personally don't think that Izzy deserves an equal cut. You know, Axl's been throwing himself on the flames for the last 20 years nonstop, you know, and taking heat for everything, whether it was about whether he had braids in his hair or did he get Botox or who's his guitarist, you know, and Izzy's been kind of laying low, and I'm sure he's played his guitar and made some records, but, you know, Axl's continued to make that brand, you know, what it is. And he's become that modern day Elvis, Michael Jackson for not just rock, but for music in general. He's a pretty legit iconic figure. So if Guns N' Roses is going to reap the rewards of a couple of years worth of shows and stadiums and make a few $100 million, I don't think the pie should be split equally with guys like Izzy Stradlin. That's my thought.
Well, that was like the same thing with Gene and Paul and Kiss. When Ace and Peter came back, they wanted like, hey, not 50-50, but 25-25-25-25. And Gene and Paul, from what I understand, were like, hey, well, we're doing Crazy Nights and, you know, Hot in the
and
Shade.
Lick It Up. And yeah, exactly. With Bruce Kulick or Mark St. John or, you know, Vinnie Vincent or any of those other guys. Yeah.
Or Jean Beauvoir on bass in those mid-'80s albums.
Right. So originally from the Plasmatics?
Yes. I mean, Kiss had more ghost musicians in the 80s than the Haunted House. I mean, they really, you know, you can't fool me, Gene.
Boo Berry on bass.
I loved Kevin Valentine's drumming on Psycho Circus. Thank you very much.
Well, you're a Kiss guy and you know your history, so.
Well, it's just
your
kind of
history. I wouldn't know all that because I'm not the most diehard of Kiss fans. So,
well, see, I like Kiss more in the '80s, which is sacrilege to say to a classic Kiss fan.
Yeah, my favorite Kiss song is "Lick It Up," which people usually get, you know, I'm not, voting for Black Diamond or King of the Nighttime World or Strutter or something like that, so.
I'm a huge Vinnie Vincent fan, as you know. Just, Vinnie, where are you? Just unmask yourself and
somewhere
come
in
out.
Nashville.
Well, I want to do a documentary on him, and it'd be perfect for Netflix. If Anvil can get made, I think the documentary and Quiet Riot, if they got a documentary on Netflix, and nothing, I love Frankie Banali, but like, I think, and this is dangerous to do this live. You throw out a documentary called Finding Vinny,
right?
And basically, it starts out with me sitting right where you are with my empty box set that he shipped me, no product. And then I'm on a plane to Nashville to go, where are my cassettes?
And sidebar, I had breakfast with Frankie Banali yesterday.
And let me tell you, like, I admire what he's done. I don't think people realize how hard it is to get stuff on the air, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, Hulu,
right?
And via Kickstarter too. I see most Kickstarter projects. I'm like, you're crazy. But I don't know if you know this about me, Stevie, but I got motivation. You know how Kickstarter works, right? If you donate a certain amount, you get a prize.
Right.
Like in the Quiet Riot case, it was I think $100 got you a signed drumstick,
or a drum head, or a signed DVD, or
$500 gets you,
name in the credits, or
platinum album or something. Right. But for $10,000, you got to be in the documentary.
Right.
So I started the next day a Kickstarter to do a documentary on the guy who donated $10,000 to be in the Quiet Riot.
You did?
Absolutely, and I got funding. But there's that, and that was the first reason I wanted to watch that documentary. I'm a huge Quiet Riot guy.
Right.
From their days at the Starwood. Thank you, Eddie Nash. But I'm like, I got to see what 10 grand gets you. Like, and about 40 minutes in, there's this clip that really had nothing to do with anything. And they're just interviewing this lawyer who's like their number one fan. I'm like, that's the guy. So 10 grand.
I didn't really like Kickstarter or the GoFundMe's. And I guess for a few reasons, like, for certain younger bands, certain situations, like there was a band from Sweden called Crash Diet, which was on the road, and their manager, Michael, who was a really nice guy, he actually died at one of their shows in England. He literally, from what I know, and I know this to be pretty in the ballpark, he was at their show while they were on stage, and he was going down into the dressing room, and he fell down the stairs in this old club. And I played this club before. So it's like this deep, dark, long staircase that looks like it's going into a, essentially like a bomb shelter under the building. He fell down those stairs and he hit his head and ended up becoming seriously hurt. And then they found him and he had to go to the hospital. They took him to the hospital, and a couple of days later, like, he died. So they started a Kickstarter to help them out to go on with the tour and continue to go forward. And they were trying to raise like 10 grand, and all their fans collectively, I think, gave them like 40 grand. It was crazy, And so in that kind of a situation, like, I was like, hey, I get it. Like, they wanted to go forward, and all their monies were tied up through their management company and through his bank, and he was married and had kids. And so I backed it. But when guys go online and go, hey, so we're thinking about making a record, and we're thinking about making merchandise, and we're thinking about, we do this and we'll do that. If everybody gives us 10 grand, then we'll make it and sell it to you. It's like, so my processing was always like, everything we've done, I've done, Tough, RLS Records, even the side things, the Cheeseheads, the Wild Side and Nitro, and my buddy and Shameless, like, we've funded our projects, put it out there, and put our money where our mouth is, and I get that it's getting harder, but I did have an idea that I wanted to do. And this ties into something that happened recently. I was like, you know what? All these fuckers are asking for money. I'm going to do a hair starter. I want money for another hair transplant. For me. I want another $20,000 to put more hair on my head. And so I had this whole idea. I was going to do this like 2 or 3 years ago. I was going to do a Kickstarter, but it was going to be called Hair Starter. And I wanted people to donate $20,000 so I could get more hair transplants. And then I thought of how I was going to, contribute and sell things. And then I was going to sell advertisement. And this is a serious thing. I shared this with some people, but I never really went public with it. I was like, I want to share advertisement as well. So I was looking for advertisers who was going to pay. Like I probably could have come to Inappropriate Earl and said, listen, if you want to throw up, $750 or $1,000, we can go to a good artist and they can draw the Inappropriate Earl logo across my forehead, and I'll take the headband off and we'll do a photo shoot pre-transplant. and then I was going to sell another spot on the top of my head, which was, thinning very badly, which is you can feel, I got a little stubble coming in there. Feel that, Earl? It's a little. So yes, I was going to go and sell, as you called me on the way here, a bald motherfucker. I think you called me.
This is no, I did not call you that.
You called me a bald son of a bitch.
Okay, that's different. Hold on, sit down so I can get a nice picture of this.
Are you gonna? I don't know if I want to have a.
Okay.
Like, do we need all those? I mean, I've already been on Instagram. I've already been on Facebook. I've already tweeted out like videos of me getting it shaved.
Yeah, I've just taken one picture of you like bald.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, have a seat, dude. You got to stop moving. I mean, I'm trying to work the mic.
The sides are coming in, and it's just a little,
1, 2, 3. Perfect.
And for the record, not that everybody gets to see this, but as you can see in the back, the transplants that took place, there's already some damage, some scars. Can you see that?
Yeah, I thought it was the Nitro logo.
But it's funny because, my buddy had hair transplants at one point as well. And he takes like MMA and like jujitsu and stuff.
I'm not making fun of him.
Of course, he goes there and people are like, dude, what happened to your head? And he always tells them some kind of crazy story like, well, these 3 guys came at me with a motorcycle chain one night, but, I'm still here, Or I got hit with a hatchet one night and I jumped in an alley.
What are you on Instagram?
At Stevie Tough.
Okay. Keep going. By the way, I saw.
Is it a horrible photo of me?
It's great, dude. Come on, man. It's no worse than your fucking beach towel photo from back in the day. I mean, let me tell you something right now. The ending of Philadelphia is less gay than that pic.
Yeah, that is a pretty brutal pic.
But mad love for the amount of women you've scored in your life.
Yeah. There's been some hit and miss and some good times. So either way, I was going to do a hair starter, but then at one point, it came to a head, no pun intended, where I was like, I'm just going to shave my head. And so I was at one point, I was like, you know what, I'm going to film it. Everybody's used to seeing me in a baseball hat or even more directly, a Monster Energy drink hat, one of my bestest sponsors forever. And when I say that, I mean, I've been involved with Monster Energy for probably almost the length of the history of the brand, meaning Monster, more than 10 years, easily.
Full disclosure, I'm a rock star guy.
Whoa, now we're having a problem.
No, Monster to me tastes a little too medicine-y.
Right.
But, rock star, I do the Diet Yellow.
Yep, you're rock star, that's all good. But, Stevie Tough, Metal Sludge, we're Monster Energy. So I always would be seen in the Monster Energy drink hat, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to put that on, and we're going to take it off, and we're just going to start shaving. And then we put it on Instagram with the half shaved look, and I look like Gallagher, and people were like, dude, what the fuck? Is that real? Like, people are texting me and they're blowing up my phone, and they thought it was like a Halloween, like rubber bald head I had on there or something. And I was like, no, I shaved my head. And I've actually shaved it in the tub a couple times, like self-shaved it, which is kind of a trip because I had never put a razor across my fucking skull, Well,
I mean, it looks like you did it with a Flowbee.
And now the sides are kind of like starting to get a little spiky, and like, the transplants that I had done back in the 90s are kind of like spiking up in front, and but hey.
Is it tough for an 80s musician, singer, rocker, whatever? What do you prefer to be known as? 80s singer, 80s
whatever. I mean, when people say hair band, it's like, that's a category of sorts, which I'm not ashamed of, but I mean, I'm a rock singer, like when I first started listening to music that I really got into, as much as I liked Motley Crue, I also liked Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. And I mean, I couldn't sing as good as Bruce Dickinson. Not many people can, but I was a fan of, of rock music, heavy metal. I mean, I think it was heavy metal before it was glam rock or hair bands. It was like, just heavy metal was the first word that I came to like. Helix and Black and Blue and Wasp. And those bands were a little bit more edgy, and it wasn't until probably Theater of Pain when Motley Crue started coming out with the pink tights and just a little bit more glammy, which I think they kind of had adopted from what the local scene was turning into at that point, which was the Faster Pussycats and the Poisons and stuff. And
Rat, like thank you very much.
Well, Rat, fashion rock, as Steven would call it.
And now we've got 3 Rats touring. We'll get it. But is it tough to, the image of all you guys was so much was the fucking hair.
Right.
And now you're bald. And I'm not giving you shit. I'm just saying, is it... I imagine it's like a fastball pitcher who can't throw a fastball anymore.
Well, you got to look at it this way as well. I look better than Steve Riley. So,
well, I mean, listen,
a lot of people do.
Prince looks better than Steve Riley now.
So, and that's not a diss to Steve, I'm just being sludgy, but I was, for whatever it's worth, I was I guess a fairly cute kid at the donut shop, when I was 16, and I didn't have long hair then, I was just a kid with a skateboard. But so the fact that I don't have great hair, that's not the biggest concern, because I have other assets, and
I bet what you want to delve into that?
No, you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's just I'm not obese, I'm not a dwarf, I'm a full 6 foot tall grown man, and I mean, there's guys out there that Sully from Godsmack's got a good head of hair, but the guy's like 5'3" and weighs 110 pounds. So that's not always the best thing, I guess, when you look at the rest of the world, the female population, and you think, well, I pretty much can't date like 98% of all women because they're all taller than me, so, there's, you gotta take what you get,
but you did it this way. You just said, F it, I'm going to shave it, versus what do you think is better? And I'm not asking you to throw, as they say on RuPaul's Drag Race, shade at, but you take a guy like, Michael Kelly Smith of Britney. Well, I guess he's not in Britney Fox anymore, but like even back in the day, he had some would argue a wig on that. And
not the best looking hair setup altogether. It didn't look that realistic, or
let's someone who's a little more known, Gene Simmons. I mean, like in the Lick It Up era, I think he still might have had his own hair, but then on that Animalize home video, it looked like he had a raccoon on his head. Right. And then previous to like Asylum, it got a little wonkier, and then
there was crazy. A mushroom or a George Washington at one point, or
that was the Asylum tour. Crazy Nights, he kind of went with almost a like a Jennifer Aniston bob, and then Hot in the Shade, he kind of was letting it grow out, and Revenge was, looked like his own hair. Piercy still has his own hair, which I think is great. I guess
Piercy's rocking.
The best example of someone who probably should have done what you did, and this is no disrespect because I'm a huge fan of Quiet Riot. I love Frankie Banali, but when Metal Health came out in '83, you could tell Kevin Dubrow was
thinning.
Which is no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then by the time I think the Wild and the Young video came out, he had like this poodle hair. So that was an option for you to do something like that, but you just thought.
Never wanted to do that. I mean, I had some extensions in the heyday like we all did, but it's funny, even like somebody said about like, somebody made a comment on my Facebook about, well, now you don't have to bleach your hair anymore. And I said, bleach my hair? The last time I bleached my hair was like probably in 1990, which is 26 years ago. So it's not like, I mean, I'm a natural blonde, and And people also said this. They said, wow, when you took your hat off and you started having your head shaved, like you had way more hair up there than I thought. And I was like, what did you think? I was a fucking cue ball with fringe on the side? Like, of course I had hair, but I didn't have great hair, and if I had Zach Wilde's hair or Sebastian Bach's hair, I'd probably still have it. But
now, did you bleach it? Because, 91, Nirvana came out and Kurt Cobain was, identified almost as much for his hair.
I mean, no, my hair was always blonde as a kid. And when I saw Vince Neil on the Shout at the Devil tour and the videos and the photos that went with it, I came home and I said, Mom, I want my hair like this, blonde. She says, you are blonde. I said, no, I want it like this. And I showed her a picture of Vince Neil and she said, that's not blonde, that's burned. And I said, I want my hair burned. How can I make it burned? And she says, well, you have to put bleach on it. And I was like going to the basement to go to the laundry area to grab a bucket of bleach. And I was going to like pour it over my head. And she explained to me that I can't do that. I'm going to burn my scalp. And she's like, you need to go to like a beautician and have her put, highlights or whatever it was called, this is like 84, so I'm like, whatever his hair has, that's what I want. So I like started, it wasn't just about being blonde. I wanted it fucking white. I wanted it bleached platinum white, which of course doing that for 5, 6, 7 years was like probably not the best for my hair. And
well, unless you wanted to be in King Cobra.
Well, yeah, and then of course, and then in Los Angeles, it's like there was places doing hair extensions, and the Johnny Rod who had like hair like CeCe's. He had really bleached hair, but it was kind of short and spiky. Then he add a foot of extensions on the side. So I was like, oh, I'll just get some of them, which it's corny looking back, but a lot of guys did it. A lot of guys didn't have to do it because they had naturally really good hair, but. So at one point, yeah, I shaved my head and people are like, are you going to let it grow back? And I'm like, well, if I let it grow back, it's going to be, probably military length or UFC fighter length. And I don't look to have long hair again. I don't look to have a ponytail again. It's now behind me. So
right,
I can still rock. I don't need to have a pony. I don't have to have a greasy little stringy ponytail in the back to rock.
Yeah, I don't think anyone looks at Rob Halford and goes, he'd be better with a full head of hair.
Right. Exactly.
By the way, I was watching the King Cobra video for their song Never Say Die.
Right.
And Louis Gossett Jr. was in it. And I would have loved to have been his agent when he got pitched. Hey, you got to do the video for the movies, band King Cobra. You got to act like that. It was kind of a parody of him and Officer and a Gentleman, where he's making King Cobra exercise and like.
I never saw that video. I'll have to look that up.
I'm telling you, it's the fucking funniest thing you got.
It's so horrible. It's amazing.
Well, here's an Academy Award-winning actor,
right?
And he's being forced to act with Johnny Rod and Marcy Free,
right?
The OG Caitlyn Jenner,
right?
I mean, he went all in.
And David Michael Phillips and Mick Sweeta.
Yes, of Bullet Boys fame, I think.
Right. And
am I correct in Mick Sweeta?
Yeah, Mick Sweeta became a Bullet Boy. And the other guy that I just said his name and I just spaced
Johnny Rod.
No, Johnny Rod, Mick Sweeta, is it Michael J. Phillips? I'm mixing his name. He's got like 3 first names.
Wasn't Michael J. Phillips in Giuffria, or am I?
He also was like in Keel, and he has. There's a lot of those guys that kind of were somehow intertwined. And Lonnie Vincent was actually in King Cobra at one point when Johnny Rod had left, and then went to Wasp.
Okay.
And Lonnie Vincent was the bassist in King Cobra for a short time, and after Mark Free had left, then Mark Tureen was actually in King Cobra for a very short time, and that's when Mark Tureen, Lonnie Vincent, and Mick Sweeta then decided to call and form their own project, which was the Bullet Boys. And then they got a drummer, which wasn't Carmine, obviously, it was Jimmy DeAnda. And then they got their deal on Warner Brothers, and Ted Templeman got involved and produced them. And they put out a couple of great records.
Now, we're in 2016. Can you get a detailed breakdown of Mark Tureen's shenanigans in the 80s right here? Inappropriate Earl.
Can I what?
Well, but I was saying, where else can you find this breakdown?
Exactly. And Mark's still out there, he's flying the Bullet Boys flag, and he's still can sing his ass off
And I
and
think
play his ass off.
was auditioned for Rat at some point. Early, like I'm talking Mickey Rat.
Yeah, I think he was, but he wasn't a singer. He was a guitarist
Right. So
for a short time. And I believe he talked about being in a situation where he auditioned for Ozzy as well.
I mean, he had to have had the chops to, I mean, Rat gets made fun of a lot, not by me, because they're my favorite band.
You're a huge Rat fan.
Even though Blotzer and I seem to have not really, jived.
Right.
He basically told me to F off on email when I'd asked him to come on the podcast.
Yeah, he's not a fan of mine either, but that's okay.
Well, let's talk about him then. I mean, yeah, here's the thing. There's 3 Rats touring. I've had Stephen Piercy on here. He was amazing. Couldn't have been any nicer. And, some people had said, Earl, if you catch him on the wrong day, he's can be difficult. I've found every interaction with Stephen Piercy to be amazing. So I thought, well, right now there's a little controversy in the Rat world. There's essentially 3 Rats touring because they can't get along.
Right.
I'll ask Blotzer to come on. And he's like, no, you had Steven on and you made fun of me on the podcast. And I think I jokingly said to Steven, well, why don't you guys just tour without Bobby? I mean, how important is the drummer really? Right. I mean, I get that he wouldn't be a fan of that line, but, it's like, Jesus, dude, get over it. You should be happy someone... I mean, I realize I'm not Eddie Trunk, like in terms of the numbers, but you should be happy anyone wants to interview you. Right. I mean, so, I mean, that's the crazy thing to me. Like, Piercy's at the Whiskey next Friday. We talked about Brett Michaels just basically playing Poison with 4 dudes. Piercy's playing basically Rat. Plus his solo stuff, which I like. I mean, I never really got into the industrial, like the Vertex stuff, but, I like that Desmond Child cheese. Right. So, I mean, what is it? Like, it's just a fan. I say to myself, can't these guys just fucking get along? Is it that hard? I mean, I understand for 30 years you're not going to, like you see riffs with Gene and Paul where you could tell they're not necessarily besties anymore. Right. What do you think it is with Rat? Why they just seems to be almost a hatred? I don't know the complete inner workings of what that band was or is or how it all came to be. I mean, I've heard things from friends and people very close and related to the situation, but I think there's more than 3 sides to the story. Like somebody says, there's his side, her side, and then the truth, or but clearly the way that Bob went about kind of hijacking the band, the brand, the name, and that's what some people have said he had essentially done. That's what's not sitting well with people, and a lot of people have said, well, what about Frankie Banali, or what about Warrant, but here's the thing. For starters, Warrant can't have Janie sing because Janie's no longer here. Right. And that I understand.
Yeah. And
Kevin as well.
Well, and here's the thing. And Warrant brought in Robert Mason, who is in his own right has some credentials. He's got a resume, and he was on, I believe, the second Lynch Mob record, and he had cut his teeth on some pretty reputable situations.
Auditioned for Rat along with you.
Not only did he audition, but he was actually the guy they picked. He was the original guy they picked. But from what I heard, they showcased, I believe, at the Viper Room for John Kalodner and Portrait Records and the label. And the label and or Kalodner, from what I heard, didn't like or didn't want Robert.
That's crazy to me.
And so then at one point the band went to Jizzy. And this is what I'd heard over the years, and I think if you Googled this, you'd find it out. But Robert has, without a doubt, a respectable resume and background and relationship to a lot of bands over 25 years or more, 30 years. So the fact that Warrant brought him in, it works. Obviously, they don't have an option to go back to Janie. As far as Frankie's concerned, and I'm comparing these because people have compared the Rat thing to Warrant or to Quiet Riot or to Whitesnake or something. As far as the Quiet Riot thing's concerned, Frankie also doesn't have an option to keep Kevin involved because Kevin's no longer here. And when Kevin did die, Frankie went into mourning for like 3 years. You know, it just stopped. Quiet Riot ceased to exist for 1, 2, going into 3, whatever years. He didn't do anything. And at one point, and this is from Frankie's, from Frankie, he told me, and I think he's talked about this in the press, that when he decided he wanted to do it again, he went to Kevin's mom and he asked for her blessing and basically said that he wanted to possibly go out and play and what were her thoughts. And at one point, Kevin's mother said, Frankie, had the shoe been on the other foot and you had died, Kevin would be out right now playing those songs for people. So I totally want you to do this. Do it for Kevin, do it for the band, do it for the history of the band and everything that's related. Go out and play Kevin's songs. And so that was a big thing for Frankie. He got Kevin's mom's, blessing and best wishes to say, go do this. And so, and then in relation to it, Frankie's band, Alex Grossi's been in the band for, I believe it's more than a decade now, like 12 years. He was also on board with Kevin and Frankie for many years. And Chuck Wright, who plays bass, for all those that don't know, he wasn't in the classic lineup per se in the videos and the tours, but like Chuck was the guy that actually played on the first record.
Yeah, in the videos. Which was a great scene in the documentary when the kid says, they're in an autograph line, and I think the kid had a copy of Mental Health, and he's giving it to he gave it to Frankie, and then Chuck kind of reaches out, and the guy's like, I'll have you sign something else. And Chuck's like, no, I played on this. And it's awkward. But right. Chuck's like, not begging, but it's like, no, dude, I really, and he takes out the liner notes.
And so, Chuck as well had been involved and was related to that project, before, during, and after those glory years as well. So, and he's in the band now. And then what's crazy too, which I believe it's in that documentary and it's been talked about, is that when it came time that they ended up with these couple singers and things went back and forth and they ended up with Jizzy Pearl, that situation, for those who don't know, back in the day, Metal Sludge had interviewed every rock star, 500 rock stars. And over the years, we interviewed Kevin DuBrow more than a few times. And we used to do a thing called Rate a Singer, where we would ask one singer about other singers. And Kevin DuBrow's Rate a Singer, the guy that he talked the most highly about and he gave a really good rating and said really good things about, was Jizzy Pearl. So how funny is it all these years later? And Frankie at one point had come to see that he read an old interview of Kevin's where Kevin talked about Jizzy Pearl, and it was on Metal Sludge. And so then when Jizzy came into sight as possibly being the next singer in Quiet Riot, it was almost kind of like a weird twist of like, wow. And Kevin, of all the singers he talked about, like Jizzy was the one guy that he really praised. And now, a decade or 12 years later, Jizzy's now going to sing in the band in place of Kevin. So, and another thing is, at the end of the day, Kevin and Frankie were very good friends. They were frickin' frack. They were, they went through a lot together over, I guess, 30 some years or whatever. And they were still partners. They were buddies. They did this together for many years. They went to the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. And going back to what Bobby's done with Rat in relationship to the other guys, including Steven, who a lot of people, Steven he's Rat to a lot of people, as is Warren and the others, but Steven is the guy, when he's the Rat guy. He's the focal point. He's the voice. And Steven and Bobby never had, from what I know, a good relationship. It was always on the rocks, and it was very, very rocky between them. So Frankie doing his thing, he still had a relationship with Kevin that was good till the end. And Bobby never had that with Steven. And Bobby, from what some people have said, has kind of hijacked the band. So, and it's legal. And at one point, I think, like Great White or Queensryche, it's going to have to go through the various legal loops and mediation and lawyers and judges. And at one point, somebody's going to have to buy somebody else out, which is kind of what I think happened between the Great Whites, the Great Mike members, and the Queensryche members. And I think that's what's going to happen with Rat at one point, but we're not there yet.
Well, I mean, I think the thing a lot of people struggle with Rat, myself included, is that, and Steven couldn't get into this on the podcast for, legal
correct
ramifications, and I respected that. But I guess you and I don't have to, we can get into it a little bit, I guess, as this was Steven's band. He founded it. So I think people are like, wait a minute, how does Bobby have control? Oh, I mean, Steven brought Bobby into the band.
Correct.
And I know there was that thing, I think, around, at various points where Bobby accused Steven of quitting the band in the middle of a tour,
right,
or before a tour started, and it cost the band money, and he lost in court. So I'm assuming the bad blood between them still stems from that. But to me, the catch-22 is Blotzer's got to know that he's going to make more money with Steven. And nothing against the guys in his band now, the Bobby Blotzer Rat Experience. I'll give him a plug. But it's like, I'm not trying to be a dick, but no one wants to see that. Do they? Am I wrong?
Well, there is some people that will say it's good and give it a shout out. And here's my thoughts on that. Respect to the guys that are involved or doing it. But, it's been, less than a year, and there's been 4 bassists, 5, 6 guitarists.
I mean, even Robbie Crane quit. Who's to me, seems like incredibly loyal to Blotzer.
Well, and Robbie kind of did it for the summer because he was kind of on hiatus from Black Star Riders, and he was in between projects, and they now started making a new record. And I think he was always committed to that and was basically free this summer to do some shows and go make some money, but as far as the guys that Bobby brought in, out of the box, it was essentially, a tribute cover band from Vegas with some guys that had not the biggest of resumes or the biggest of names. And, here's the thing, when he first did Bobby Blotzer's Rat Experience, I saw the videos, and a lot of other people did too. And everybody said the same thing, like, wow, they sound great. And that Josh kid can sing those songs amazing. But you know what? There's some drummers out there that play the drums better than Lars Ulrich. There's Metallica tributes with amazing drummers. There's Kiss tributes with guys that are playing, quote unquote, the Paul, and can sing Paul's parts from 1977 and 79 and do them great. But at the end of the day, does anybody want to see a guy from a tribute band singing the Kiss songs? No, we want to see Paul Stanley. And we don't want to go see Metallica and go, well, this guy's a better drummer, but it's not Lars, it's some guy from Austin, Texas, or, and so as good as Josh can sing, people, great for the Bobby Blotzer's Rat Experience or a Rat tribute, but it's not Rat. Stephen Pearcy is Rat. Warren DeMartini is Rat. Juan Crocier is Rat. And even Bobby Blotzer is, to an extent, a part of Rat, but not by himself, with whoever he decides to bring out that weekend. That's not Rat.
Yeah, I mean, because, I love Pearcy's solo band, because you do have the bass player from Mickey Rat, so he does know the songs as good as you can.
And Chris Hagar on guitar as well, who was also a part of Mickey Rat.
Yeah, I love Chris. I mean, so you've kind of got the earliest version of Rat, at least 3 of the 5 guys. And, the guitarist Eric Fiorentino, is that the lead guitar, the guy who does Warren's parts?
I don't know who that guy is, but
he's been with Steven forever, I think 10 years. Eric, it's either
bald hair with
a little mohawk. Fiorentino. I'm sorry. I really apologize to him that I'm not getting his name down. But he doesn't.
Fabio.
He doesn't exactly sound like Warren. I mean, Warren has a very specific tone.
Nobody rocks. He does the job. And Steven's out there. It's the Stephen Pearcy band. He's not trying to say this is Rat, Right. And that's where the difference is. And people bring the Bret Michaels thing into play as well. But Bret didn't say, hey, this is Poison. He's saying I'm the Bret Michaels band. That's what he calls it. And he does Poison songs, and he also does a handful occasionally of his solo songs, and of course he does cover songs. I mean, and he does. Some people complain, but he's done everything from the Kiss cover to the Sweet Home Alabama to, I think he even does like Sublime, What I Got, and
he does a great Judas Priest of Heading to the Highway.
Does he do that?
It's really good.
For real? I've never heard him do Heading Out to the Highway.
I love it, but it's he makes it his own because his voice doesn't sound like Halford's.
Right. So he's not trying to say it's Poison, and that's where people are.
I was talking about Piercy doing Heading Out on the Highway.
Oh, Piercy, you're talking about. Not
Sorry
Bret
about
Michaels.
that. My bad.
Okay. I was going to say Bret Michaels does Heading Out to the Highway. But anyways, here's where it gets tricky. And this is where I say people, meaning industry people and comrades and people within the bands and friends of and related to. When a promoter gets a hold of a logo and puts together an ad mat, and then there's an advertisement that says, live this Saturday night in concert, Rats. And you hear round and round. And it goes into the actual Atlantic Records recording. And you hear the guitar parts for Lay It Down. In concert this Saturday night, come and see Rat live. And it goes into You're in Love and Back for More. And now Joe Blow, who's driving home from work in his truck, hears that commercial. And he hears that. And he's like, fuck, that's badass. And so now he tells his wife, let's go see Rat and so. And so now they buy a $25 ticket and they go to the concert, and some of them do get there and go, hold it. Who's that?
Right.
That's not Rat. And there is a larger percentage. We're in Los Angeles, and for people in the industry, we're here, we know the difference, but there's a lot of states and a lot of cities and a lot of C and D markets and county fairs and casino gigs in Iowa and Kansas that those people aren't privy to every bit of industry information. And so they're seeing the ad mat, the logo, or they're hearing that commercial with that big radio voice, Sunday, and they're like, holy shit, it's Rat, it's so-and-so, it's this. And then they go, holy shit, that's not who I thought it was, and they might sound great, but there is people that have stood there and then went, fuck. And then, they realize it's not Stephen Piercy. It's not Warren DeMartini. It's not the real Rat band. And that's where the false narrative comes out,
Well, it's like you can, and I love Stephen Piercy's voice.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people, they had to triple track his vocals and live sometimes it can be a little wonky, but I don't care. Like, I don't, you could
It's like I said about Paul Stanley. Paul's voice is, hit the bricks a little bit along the way. Steven's been doing this 40 years. I mean, Mickey Rat dates back to, if I'm not mistaken,
Mid-70s.
76, So, he doesn't have the pipes that he used to. Hey, who cares? It's Steven, and that's part of what makes Rat what Rat is. I mean, he never sounded like Pavarotti or Bruce Dickinson to begin with. It's an attitude and a swagger and a delivery that he has as a package, and doesn't make a difference if a 29-year-old kid can hit all the notes. People don't want to see that as Rat.
Yeah,
that's just my thought.
No, you're right. It's like, I'm a huge Kiss fan, second favorite band, and I don't mind Eric Singer or Tommy Thayer being in the band. They frankly can play better than Ace and Peter right now. I mean, I've seen Kiss with Peter his last run. It was like, even as a fan, I'm like, this is not good. And it's no disrespect to him, but it's like Jesus. But Paul's, Jesus, he's in his early 60s, so I'm not shitting on the guy. But
Right.
it's like, it's rough. And David Lee Roth, same thing. But I wouldn't want to hear anyone else sing the songs.
Yeah. And as far as like the Eric Singer thing's concerned, people have questioned that or said things about it, the diehards. But, at that point, he was brought in because Eric Carr was sick, and not only sick, but shortly after succumbed to cancer and died. And from what I know, and I'm not the biggest of Kiss fans, but I don't think Peter Criss was anywhere in the wheelhouse of even being involved with Kiss at that point. So Gene and Paul were doing their thing, and that was the record with like Domino and stuff like that. And Bruce Kulick was still there.
Revenge.
Okay. So, Eric Singer had to be brought in, and that was 91, 92. So, I mean, he had obviously been brought in and I think had come from Alice Cooper, another respectable project. Or actually Badlands.
Badlands is also in a very, I don't want to say bizarre version, but a kind of one of the wackier lineups of Black Sabbath.
Right.
Where it was like Tony Iommi and three dudes.
So, Eric stepped in and did his job and is a pro and continued to be so, throughout that decade and then into the 2000s. And as they obviously went and brought the other guys back and then came full circle and the other guys said, well, if we don't get, or it was, I believe to be said or alleged that, if we don't get an even split or more money, then we're out of here. And it's like, okay, Ace and Peter, then you're out of here. And then they brought Eric back in. And as many people know, Tommy had been involved with them for many years, from Gene producing Black and Blue to Tommy being involved with Kiss as a tour manager, production guy. He was helping Paul and Gene and that capacity where it just felt natural to have him step from the side of the stage to put his guitar over his neck and be the ace.
Well, I know
Acenstein or whatever, like Frank and Ace.
He does have a big head. I mean, I have a big head, but I mean, Jesus Christ. Tommy Thayer could have protected President Kennedy if he was riding shotgun with him that
exactly.
day. Melonhead. I think the fans on Metal Sludge call him Melon. They don't even call him Tommy Thayer. They call him Melonhead.
I've heard Frank and Ace, which that's kind of funny.
But I mean, like, to be like, Kiss is different. Like, I mean, Ace and Peter, like, they were, the reunion tour, like, everyone wants to see Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a little bit more power, in my opinion, than, say, Izzy, but I could also see Gene and Paul's thing, like, hey, we've kept this band afloat while you guys were off making whatever you were doing. We're not going to give you an equal cut. But it was like a weird, like they were going to make boatloads of money only with Ace and Peter.
Right.
So, I mean, it was like, whereas with, like Izzy, it's like Guns N' Roses is going to make tons of money as long as you have those three, Axl.
Yeah, and even though Slash was not in Guns N' Roses for those 20 plus years, he had done multiple releases and Slash has undoubtedly become, probably a top 5 guitar hero, icon, legend, whatever you want to put him in. He's in the category with the Eddie Van Halens and the Stevie Ray Vaughns, and he's absolutely in that upper tier of guys, and it's not like he just went away and made 1 or 2 solo records. He's had multiple records, multiple projects. He's clearly the face of Gibson and Marshall, and he's the face of rock and roll. Undoubtedly the biggest guitar influence since Eddie Van Halen.
I would agree with that. And by the way, all his projects feature my great friend, the great Brent Fitz.
Brent Fitz on drums.
And Miles Kennedy on vocals, who I love, man. I mean, I saw them at the Palladium maybe a year ago. And Todd Kearns on bass, Winnipeg's finest. And I forget the other.
So is it half Canadian guys? Because Brent's Canadian too, right?
Brent's from Winnipeg. Todd's from Winnipeg. There's a rhythm guitar player who's really, really good. I don't know his story. Sorry for not knowing. All
Canadians.
And
so these guys must all know about hockey then too.
Yeah, well, Brent's a huge hockey guy, but they would do the Guns N' Roses songs, and I love Miles Kennedy's take on those songs, but I could see people going, "Oh, this ain't Axl." But so what are you going to do?
Right?
I mean, they can't get along. What's Slash supposed to do?
But now they are getting along, and they did those stadium shows, and they did well, and it went over great. And
there's a weird. I went to the Dodger Stadium show Thursday night.
You did,
and
how was it? Can I ask?
Absolutely.
Give me your 2 cents.
Well, I'm a fan of the band. I'm not like a super fan. It was a weird stage dynamic. You got the feeling that Axl, Slash, and Duff weren't necessarily getting along because there was virtually no stage interaction between the three. It was like they were all in their own sections of the stage, which was massive. And Duff seemed to interact the most with Richard Fortus, the rhythm guitar player, who kind of looks like Izzy. I don't know if that's intentional or not. And Slash had some nice interactions with Frank, the drummer, Frank Ferrer, I think, if I'm saying his name correctly, who I loved. And then I could do without the two keyboard players, to be honest with you. I mean, I know Dizzy's been in the band forever, but the second female or second keyboard player.
She's really sexy, though. Like,
she's
I saw
hot.
some pictures of her and like, wow, is she a nice looking girl?
And very good. It's nothing against her abilities, but it's like when I think of Guns N' Roses, I don't think of double keys. What is this, White Snakes here?
Well, and I think that's where Axl throws the curveballs at you, where it went from like, okay, we're going to get a lead guitarist in the band. And this is not recent. This is 15 years ago. But we're going to get a guitarist in the band that wears a chicken bucket on his head and a mask and wears a raincoat. And then during his guitar solo, puts a pair of nunchucks over his shoulders and goes crazy with them. And so for Axl to go, we're going to put another keyboardist in the band. But you know what? Let's throw in a sexy young girl with blue hair. It's like, that's Axl just really throwing some flavor at you that...
Which I don't necessarily mind because I am a huge Buckethead fan. And if you I know a lot of people don't take him seriously because he wears literally a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket on his head. But as a guitar player, as a technical guitar player, I don't know if there's any better.
Yeah, he's a freak.
He does this is kind of a weird, kind of related. There was a show I watched as a kid called Giant Robot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a show. It was like a Japanese, it wasn't animated. It was live action, where this little Asian kid, Johnny Sacco, would speak into a watch and give this giant robot orders, and the robot would only follow the kid's orders. And there was a really nice instrumental theme song to it. And Buckethead is a huge fan of this show, Giant Robot. So he does these wacky solos where he integrates the theme song to Giant Robot. So.
And doesn't he do the robot on stage too? Like,
yeah, he does, because the robot. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, Giant Robot had these very it was like the late '60s,
right.
So there was no CGI,
right?
Very like restricted, heavy movements with his hands,
right?
Spielberg wasn't directing this, so
wow.
But I think as great of a guitar player as Buckethead is, everyone looked at him and go, this guy ain't Slash.
Right.
He might be an even better guitar player than Slash from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
But
Slash is more of a feel guy. He's got a little bit more of a feel and soulful guitarist thing going on, where Buckethead is like kind of a machine and,
Well, he's like, Ace Frehley. Not the most technically proficient guitar player.
Right.
Take some of the guys who replaced him, Mark St. John, Vinnie Vincent, technical wizards.
Right.
But especially because Mark wasn't in the band that long. And I got to be honest with you, Animalize, probably my favorite guitar sounding Kiss record ever.
So what's that big hit? Heaven's on Fire?
Heaven's on Fire, Thrills in the Night.
Tears Are Falling is not on that record.
Tears Are Falling is Asylum.
Okay.
I think, and Gina Paul shit on Mark St. John's. He wasn't right for the band, but you guys fucking, Grover Jackson picked him. I'm sure he was right.
Right.
And he only played like 2 or 3 concerts with him, which is probably the rarest Kiss bootlegs out there, or anything with Mark St. John. And I think someone in the Kiss camp told me, Paul looked over at Mark St. John once and he's playing with his teeth and he's like doing these wacky movements. And Paul's like, this guy's not going to upstage me.
Right.
Which I guess it's Paul's band, but it's like you guys wanted a Jake E. Lee clone, a George Lynch clone, a Brad Gillis, a Randy Rhoads. You got it.
Right.
So, and same thing with Vinny and Bruce Kulick is like the jack of all trades. I mean, I know you, full disclosure, you've worked with Bruce and Shameless.
I have.
Or on Shameless.
And we played some live shows together
in
Germany
Bruce.
and in Holland and
Bruce currently in Grand Funk Railroad. I
yep.
think. He literally can play anything.
And is Bruce probably the youngest guy in Grand Funk Railroad? That's kind of crazy, huh?
Bruce got to be in his mid-50s.
Those guys in Grand Funk Railroad, that's an old band.
Yeah.
Right?
And I saw them play at a like a country fair.
American Band, is that their big hit?
Yeah.
which is from what, like 74 or earlier, maybe
early 70s. But you know, Grand Funk was like, when I saw them play live with Bruce, it was kind of like watching Kool and the Gang when I saw them open for Van Halen.
Right.
You don't realize how many hits they
right. And then you're hearing multiple songs. You're like, oh, I know that song. I know that song.
It's like, you know, Kool and the Gang, you just think Celebration and maybe Joanna, but then, you know, there's like 4 or 5 other songs, and then it's the same thing with Grand Funk.
Right.
So I guess the whole point of this is fans, I think, have an affinity for the original lineups. You know, Frank Ferrer, the drummer, is amazing in Guns N' Roses.
He is.
I noticed they did take out 1 in a Million with a black drummer in the band. You gotta,
yeah, you know, and at the end of the day, the whole thing with the original guys, it's like, it's just, as people grow, the things change. You know, it's just like, it's like being a football fan or a sports fan. When Brett Favre was no longer a Packer and then went to the Jets, that just seemed like that can't be right. And then he went to the Vikings for a year, which was like, and like when Emmitt Smith left the Cowboys and went to the Arizona Cardinals, like seeing Emmitt Smith with a Cardinal on his helmet and red pants was just like, or Joe Montana, who left the San Francisco 49ers and went to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Or OJ, the great Orenthal James Simpson, went to the 49ers for 2 years.
Or he went from being, you know, as iconic football player, Hertz rental car, you know, airplane movie, to like, really, you like murdered your wife and her boyfriend and we're chasing you down the freeway right now? Like,
allegedly.
Allegedly. There's certain things to watch and see and just go, wow, is that really happening? Like, that's just not right. Like seeing Brett Favre in a Vikings helmet was just, to Packer fans, was like, and I'm a diehard Packer fan, but I mean, there was people in Wisconsin that if they could have killed him and his wife and his daughters, they would have done it. They were that mad, you know? And I'm like, hey, you know, the Packers moved on. And at one point, the Vikings went, hey, you want to play another year? We'll give you $18 million, you know?
I mean,
and Brett thought, you know, I got a couple of weekends to go. I got another 6 months in me. Sure, I'll take the money, you know? And it's like, I guess when a band breaks up or somebody leaves or somebody quits and then they go, well, hey, you want to do this or go here? There's reasoning behind it, and people can't always stay together. And there's a lot of different moving parts that make a product, a band, a team, you know, work or not work, or work together or not work together.
I mean, the only thing I've ever experienced in that realm is when Franco Harris, I'm the biggest Pittsburgh Steeler fan, loved him in the 70s when I was a
Joe
kid.
Green, Jack Lambert, Terry Bradshaw, Lynn Swan.
I mean,
Stallworth.
Maybe the greatest collection of athletes.
Rocky Blyer.
In an individual, or in a team sport, 9 Hall of Famers out of 22 starters.
Wow.
I mean, that's just, there's no team that can close to matching that, except maybe the Edmonton Oilers when they had Gretzky, Curry, Messier, Coffey, Grant Fuhrer. But when Franco Harris was chasing Jim Brown's record, and he really wanted it, and I think the Steelers were like, dude, we're done. He played, I think, 1 year for the Seattle Seahawks, and it was brutal, man. It was just like, even as a somewhat of a early teenager, I'm like, man, this just is hard to watch.
Yeah. And the Seahawks came into the league in what, 80?
That I'd have to look up.
Tampa Bay and Seattle both came in, I want to say, in 80.
I think, well, Tampa Bay.
Wikipedia that.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
I've got the Mike Knuckles in one hand. Thank you, Stephen Piercy.
Okay.
I'm trying to send out a picture of you and your new look on Facebook just to get the numbers up. It's like a preview. So we've talked about original lineups. You know, some playing, some not playing. The Hair Nation Festival you did, did it have one original lineup? Because you had like LA Guns, you had Tough, you had Britney Fox. What was the mood like when you had all these, you know, pretty big bands, not one huge band, but like, and I don't mean this as a
I don't think I'm thinking right now about everybody that was there. I don't think any one band had all original members. The only one who I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think Odin did, because I know Aaron played bass and the one Duncan guy was there, and I'm pretty sure it was Randy singing. I'm going to say that Odin might have been all original members. For those that don't know or don't remember, Odin was best known for their spot in Decline of Western Civilization, where they were on stage, I believe at Kazari's, and the crowd was going, Odin, Odin, Odin.
And they were in the jacuzzi with like all these hot girls.
And that's when Randy O said, yeah, if I don't get as big as Robert Plant, I'm going to kill myself, and then it became kind of a internet joke as years went by that when he did get interviewed, like, well, you didn't get as big as Robert. How are you still alive? You were supposed to kill yourself. But so yeah, I mean, as far as one of those bands having every original member, I don't think anybody was. There's a couple of bands that had maybe 3 members there. I think Kix has got 3 guys: the singer, I believe the drummer, maybe even both the guitarist, but the bassist is not the same.
Because like Britney Fox, you had Johnny D, the drummer, and
Billy Child's the bassist, and then Tommy Paris is the second singer that replaced when Dean quit. And they did one major label record with Tommy, which was on Atlantic.
Bite Down
Hard with the song Louder, actually, which I actually like that song. So there's, and technically that's really only one of the original Britney Fox guys, because even Johnny wasn't an original. Tony Sticks Destra was the drummer who got killed on the way home from either a showcase or a recording studio session or something, right as they were about to getting signed.
Yeah, which and I think there's so many parallels with Britney Fox and Cinderella, because I know Michael Kelly Smith
was an original
guitar player,
original guitarist in Cinderella.
And I want to say Tony Destra was at
the original drummer as well. And the label signed Tom, and they took Eric, but then they threw the other 2 to the side, and Styx Destra and Michael Kelly got Dean and formed Britney Fox, which was essentially like
Diet Cinderella.
Yeah, Diet Cinderella, Cinderella Light.
And
and Johnny D came from Wasted.
Okay.
With Phil Way. Pete Way.
Right.
Not Phil Way, Pete Way.
And I loved Britney Fox, but they just, I guess there was only room for one. Fun
fact, I don't know if you knew this, but we were managed by the same company that managed Britney Fox.
Back in their heyday?
Power Star Management, Brian Kushner, Pensacola, New Jersey. He's the one who got them their deal and managed them through their heyday, and then eventually he got involved with us.
Tough.
And came to LA in the summer of '89, and we met with him, and then he started representing us, and he helped us get our first East Coast tour, which, now I don't know if you know this either, and you're a big Britney Fox fan, we might have never shared this, but Tough was booked to play an East Coast tour in the spring of 1990 with Britney Fox in Providence, Rhode Island, Boston, Philadelphia, Virginia, New Jersey, up and down the East Coast for like 2 weeks. And we flew all the way to Philadelphia. We got off the plane. We went to the hotel, and this is pre-signing. This is early spring 1990. And we were on the verge of our record deal, but we didn't actually have it yet. And Britney Fox had just put out that second record. Maybe Dream On was the single. Does that sound right?
Well, let me, I want to, their big record had, what did it, Save the Week?
Didn't they Long Way From Home or something like that?
Long Way to Love.
Long Way to Love. So we're on tour. We land in Philadelphia. We go out to a strip club. Me, Michael, George, Todd, I want to say Billy Childs, probably Johnny D, maybe a roadie or a tour manager. So there was about 6 or 8 of us. We went to a strip club, and then we went to like what they call a Wawa out there. It's kind of like a 7-Eleven.
I love Wawa.
Right. And they like have sandwiches and all stuff. So we go in there. It's like 2:30 in the morning, and we're all wearing like our jackets, which say Tough, Los Angeles, Hollywood, California, with our names on the back. And some of us, one of us is wearing like a LA Raiders hat.
Oh.
And we're all leather jackets and boots and chains, and there was like 9 of us, and we're in a Wawa getting food at 2:30 in the morning, and out of nowhere, like 5 squad cars pull in full speed, all rocking, and they kind of step in pretty quickly into the Wawa, and they're like looking around. And now they're just like, there's nonchalantly like 7 cops all of a sudden in the Wawa. And we've only been in there for like 60 seconds. And so cops are all kind of standing around. And then I said, hey, I got to ask, like, how come you guys just pulled in like, gangbusters and there's, 7 of you here? And he goes, where are you guys from? I said, we're from LA. We're a rock band. He goes, oh, okay. What do you want on tour? I said, yeah, we're actually on tour with Brittany Fox. And I go, this is, a couple of the guys. He's like, oh, okay. We know those guys are local, rock stars. And he goes, yeah. The cashier freaked out. He thought he was going to get robbed, and he called 911 and, said he was about to be robbed by a bunch of gangsters. So these cops roll in. And, we said, nah, we're on tour, we're from LA, but, cops were super nice then, said goodbye.
Well, you guys were white. That helped. I mean, let's be honest. If you guys were living color, it might have been guns drawn.
And so the next day we went to our hotel and went to bed. Next day we woke up, drove up to the living room in Providence, Rhode Island. We opened up for Brittany Fox. We kicked ass. It was a great show. Had a blast. This was our first East Coast appearance. We had been in the Midwest. We'd been in Texas. We had been in Denver and, all over the West Coast here, but, Minneapolis, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Chicago, but we hadn't been that far east. So this was our first show there. And now we're on tour with Brittany Fox. We've got, 2 weeks of dates, tough supporting the MTV darlings, and, cause Brittany Fox, is on Dial MTV and all that.
A lot.
Yeah. And the next day we went to Boston and we were in the hotel and we went to the mall because that's what you do. We went to the record store to look around and, get noticed. We're, from the West Coast and from Hollywood and with our jackets on. And we come back from the mall and we hear all this noise in the hallway. And it was a bunch of ruckus. So we thought the guys were screwing around. They're playing football or they're chasing each other with, throwing ice on each other. We just thought it was like tour shenanigans. We'd done this before. And we come out in the hallway and Dizzy Dean is on top of Michael Kelly Smith and Johnny D and Billy Childs and Richie, the tour manager, and everybody. They're trying to pull Dean off and there's punches and yelling and screaming and choking and hair extensions being pulled. And we basically walked into the fight, the breakup. And so then everybody scattered and then the tour manager and everybody, ran in their rooms. And then there was all this, we're like, what's going on? And so then they explained to us that there was a band meeting that turned into a fight and Dean had attacked Michael, allegedly, and he was quitting the band and he was leaving. And so at one point, they asked me to go try to talk some sense into Dean from leaving the band. And they had already known us because we shared management company and Dean had known who we were as well. And he knew that I was kind of the straight-laced guy in the band. I was the non-smoker, non-drinker. And that's kind of his thing. He was real militant about that. Kind of Gene and Paul style. So I had to go to Dean's room and I'm trying to, Dean's packing his bags. He's getting ready to go to like the train station to go back to Philadelphia. He's quitting the band. It's over with. Brittany Fox is done. And I'm like thinking, this is the second day of our tour. Where the fuck are you going? We just flew here from LA. You can't do this, And, I tried to talk him off the ledge and he told me that he liked me and he respected me and he thought that we were going to go far and blah, blah, blah. But his band is done with and he's going to go home and he's got a new band and he's doing what turned out to be Black Eyed Susan. And
which is good. I mean,
whole new direction, kind of Black Crows-ish. And, but needless to say, everything that we had worked for to come to the East Coast for like these, 10, 12 shows had literally evaporated in 48 hours. And
what was the main reason for him leaving?
Well, the guys in Brittany Fox, I think, like to party like any rock band at this point. And that meant just girls drinking, partying, doing what most guys were doing. I don't think anybody was ODing. Nobody was like sticking needles in their arms. But Dean was very, very militant about what he wanted the guys to do. And I remember them talking about he wanted them to rehearse on days off while they were on tour.
Because he was like wanted to be like a good, like a musician. Like
he was just very strict about what he wanted guys to do and work out and go to bed at a reasonable time and wake up and eat right and do push-ups and sit-ups. And at one point, not every guy's going to want to do that in a rock band, especially. It's like, no, I want to smoke pot and fuck her. It's like, so there was a real divide there. And, I guess they had meetings about this and everybody had tried to adhere to certain things. But at one point we're like, dude, this is fun now. We're on the road. We're on a tour bus. We're with the guys in Tough going to a strip club or whatever. Like, we're just going to go have fun, And so needless to say, it dissolved in front of our very eyes. I was the Stevie helped save the day, and I tried to talk to Dean and I said, Dean, this is our first East Coast tour. We spent thousands of dollars to fly out here. We have a rental van. We have merchandise. We're ready to play. We want to do these shows. We want to open up for you guys. But nothing changed it. And within a couple hours, he was in a taxi on his way to the airport or to the train station. And that was the end of Britney Fox. So then, then it was, everything had to be, solved in a matter of a couple of 24 to 36 hours, and the venues that had booked all the shows weren't willing to just book Tough. They were selling headlining tickets for Britney Fox, this Columbia recording artist, MTV band.
Because on the East Coast they were fairly big.
Well, they're from Philadelphia, so they had already kind of established themselves in that tri-state area as well. And so once they broke up and it was over and they canceled all the shows, we didn't have any shows either. And within 48 hours, we were on our flights back home. And that probably cost us, I would say, in the $10,000 range when you put in flights and the rentals and the plans to leave and go out and come back. And so we were part of that, which was kind of gnarly.
And that was like, maybe, what was that? What year was that?
And to be honest, the one show we played with them, we crushed them. I love Britney Fox, and they were great guys, but they were already, a couple of records in, had done a lot of stuff, and we were, at that point, not to sound goofy, but we were the next Poison, the next Motley Crue, and we were just on fire. Like, we were 22, 23, 24 years old, and we looked better, we were younger, we were hungry, and we just fucking destroyed that place, sold merch, screwed every girl. I mean, I remember, this is Honest Indian. They pulled up in a tour bus. We pulled up in a minivan. And as they got out, people walked up to them. But when we got out of the van, it was like George with his hair and me and Michael looking like Nikki Sixx and whatever. Like, we just, took over the excitement of like, this is that band we've been reading about in Metal Edge or Blast or Powerline or Metal Licks and now we're on the East Coast and about ready to destroy everybody in our path.
Well, in defense of Britney Fox,
they weren't very good looking to begin with.
they look like an Amber Alert lineup with instruments.
Yeah.
But, the
best looking guy was Johnny, and he was hidden behind the drum kit. So,
And he had that perm, who many years later I tried to hook him up with a Motorhead because there was a point in time where Mickey D was, his status in the band was
on the chopping block for a bit, maybe.
I'm an open. No, I think I forget there was just possibilities, and I was asked because of my knowledge of music and whatnot. Hey, do you want to start, reaching out to people? And he was the first guy I reached out to because I thought, oh,
wow,
different drummer than Mickey D for sure,
right?
And I think he thought I was bullshitting him, but I'm like, no, here's the management's. But Mickey thankfully stayed on because was really perfect for Motorhead, and now he's in the Scorpions,
right?
Which I imagine.
And Johnny's been playing with Doro Pesh for
ever.
God, since the Britney Fox thing ended, and even probably maybe during the end of it. So he's been in that band for like 25 years. And Doro's big all over Europe. I mean, I saw him at Hair Nation. He said they just got back from a tour of the Ukraine, like a Ukrainian tour.
And they're playing big venues.
Yeah. She's playing some of those big events. And even though maybe not a headliner, she's still playing on big shows with the Maidens and the Priests and the,
Motorheads, until recent memory. But that's the crazy thing about I know you go over there a lot. It's like some of these, countries just love 80s, music still. I mean, I know Mr. Big is still big in, pardon the pun, Japan.
Well, and to give you a comparison, Tough went and played in Brazil. The last time was about 2011, so about 5 years ago. And we played, and we ended up having well over 300 people that came to our show. You know, it was like a 400 or 500 seater, and it was pretty much close to capacity, which for us, that's a lot of numbers. On the same exact night, Zakk Wylde, Black Label Society, played an arena in the city that was like a 5,000 seater, and it was sold out. Now, if Black Label Society headlines in the United States of America, they're doing House of Blues, you know, maybe 1,000, 1,200 seaters, you know, maybe 1,500 seats, unless they're on Ozfest or something, then they're on a big stage and they get a lot more people. But just, you can see by the comparison, they can go to Brazil and play 3,000 to 5,000 seat arenas and sell them out, which is literally 3 to 5 times the amount of people they would draw in America. And same thing with Tough. I mean, Tough's 100 to 150 person draw on most club shows, occasionally a couple hundred. But in Brazil, we had, you know, the better part of 400 people there, you know, who paid probably a pretty handsome ticket as well. Not $10, but more like $25, you know?
Well, I'm just amazed at the, you know, Rat still, you know, when they were with Piercy and
right.
With Cavazo, they would go to Brazil and
played on. I think they played on the Rock in Rio thing. And,
yeah,
you know.
and there's a very infamous recording of their set. That's
right.
You know, maybe not the best representation.
It's like a bad soundboard with like all different mics, and it's not mixed well, and
it sounds right? Like, once again, as a non-musician, it sounds like 5 guys playing to different songs. But I still like, I could care.
But I bet you, like, sitting in that open air arena stadium was probably sounded loud and badass and killer. But yeah, when you kind of break it down and single out a vocal, a bass, a drum, and it's a raw soundboard tape with really nothing that's been mixed or nothing put through any types of compressors and choruses and balanced. It's a little raw sounding.
But speaking of soundboard recordings, I was listening to Kiss 84 Nashville yesterday as bootleg off the soundboard.
Right.
And you know, if you like 80s Kiss, they really should release this as a live album. I know they won't.
It's good.
If you like that, they very fast tempo. Like, it's so weird to listen to Vinny and Eric doing the classic Kiss songs, you know, Cold Gin and Firehouse, because it's sped up pretty amazingly. But it is funny the different levels of bootleg quality that are out there. You know, I have a few Springsteen boots that, like, maybe I told you the story about that place in Westwood that I had shut down by accident, right?
I don't remember that.
So there was this store called Mayhem in Westwood, bootleg CDs, VHS tapes that I still have, as you can see.
Right.
And so I'm at my dad's country club one day, and I see Mike Douglas, the talk show host, legendary talk show host of the 70s. And one of the bootleg VHS tapes I got was of Kiss on Mike Douglas. Mm-hmm. And I saw Mike Douglas, and I'm like, hey, man, I just saw Kiss on your show. Now, this is probably in the 90s.
Right.
So he's like, what are you talking about? Because his show wasn't on the air. It wasn't in syndication anymore. Like, oh, I bought a copy of it at this store in Westwood. It was great. And he kind of looked at me weird, and get home. As soon as I get home, there's a phone call. Earl, it's Mike Douglas. And he must have known who my dad was. And like, hey, Mr. Douglas, what's up? He's like, Earl, where'd you say that store was? I'm like, oh, it's in Westwood. It's called Mayhem. They got great stuff. Like, I'm pitching him this store that's like costing him money, I guess. I go down about 3-4 days later to buy more bootlegs, and the store had been shut down. But I mean, it was
a business.
You know, so I'm sorry, Mayhem. If the owners of that store are listening, my bad. But, you know, now I guess you can go on eBay and buy that shit. And,
right.
You know, I guess there's, I know I forget the message board about MMA. It's not called the dark web, but there's a underground website for MMA stuff. I'm sure there's many for music bootlegs and CDs. I don't know where you could find them. So Stevie, I mean, I could talk to you all day. What, you know, Where do you see the music business going? I buy all my shit exclusively now on iTunes. I know most stand-up comics, it's different medium, I guess. All their stuff is sold on iTunes. Like, how do, like, I used to go to, Rat concerts or whatever, buy CDs at the merch booth. Where's it going now for bands?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm at a point where, I think we're in the fourth quarter essentially for our career or what I do. And, making music and doing what, amounted to demo tapes at one point and then trying to get a record contract off that and submitting it with a paper bio and an 8x10 that you go over to like, J&L Photography on La Brea or something. And we need 50 press shots. And here's our PO box and here's our hotline, a fax number or whatever you had on there. Like all that is 25 years removed. And even having, what then amounted to CDs or, here's our video, and then being able to upload things on YouTube and even if the highest quality. I mean, now it's like stuff like leave Britney alone, ends up getting fucking 20 million views, some weird
Vine, Instagram, Periscope.
Yeah, so the way press works and publicity, I mean, it's there's got to be different avenues and different things that can be done. I mean, I'm not a huge Kanye West fan, but I do think that some of the things he's done are absolutely brilliant. Like, and I don't know who started these, but I don't pay 100% attention to all modern artists and whatever, but this whole pop-up store thing where they go and basically say, we're going to have 10 stores open up on September 1st, one in New York, one in LA, one in Chicago, one in Miami, one in Atlanta, one in Dallas, one in Seattle, one in, Detroit. And they pick these 10 places and they say, we're going to have a store with limited items for one day. And they don't tell anybody until 2 days before. And they say, Kanye West pop-up store, such and such La Brea from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And literally, with Instagram and with their following, there's, and you probably saw this, right? With the hundreds of people standing in line from the night before, all with a credit card and a pocket full of cash, ready to buy t-shirts for $75 a piece, or hoodies for $300, or jackets for $1,000, or belts for $200. And they literally open up a store in an empty venue for one day and do $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in business, like crazy, absolutely crazy, but it works to an extent. I even thought that Kanye West's recent concerts I saw of him with the floating stage above the crowd, I mean, I thought that was genius. Like, out of all the things we've seen with all the bands, from the Kisses and the Motley Crues and the Bon Jovis, like, here's this platform floating above 10,000 people and Kanye West on it with one microphone. And he's got a safety belt around his waist with a chain, that's literally, he can go up to the edge and look over. And the thing is turning. And I thought, that's genius. That's absolutely genius. So how music's going to be shared, or concerts will be attended, or tickets will be sold, I think there's still new things to be done. I think different artists will present it in different ways. But just being a band and making a video or a tape or having a song or having a promotional item, it's all still moving. It's all still changing. And I mean, compared to what the Beatles did or Elvis, when they did before records, a single, they'd cut a song and then they realized, well, if we're going to put it on a 45, we need a B side. We need at least 2 songs. So there's something on the other side. And they used to sell those little 45s that we'd get, at the store. And then it became albums and double albums and gatefolds and then the CDs and all the different 8 tracks and cassettes. And, you know, now the social network platforms are out of control. I mean, I go on YouTube and I'm like, I can share this through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and Gmail and Google. And like, there's like 15 little bars. I'm like, I don't even know what 10 of those are. I've never even heard of them, you know?
Right. I mean, I saw MTV had an award show the other day, and it's an old joke. I'm certainly not the only person to say it, but it's like, how do you have a video award show? And I don't even know if they play fucking videos anymore.
Right.
It's all, you know, I'm 16 and pregnant, or, you know,
14 and pregnant.
You know, I mean, that show really could go on forever. I mean,
right.
Just, you know, I'm waiting for I'm 87 and pregnant.
You know, so, I mean, I don't know where it's going. I just know that. Because
videos were so much a part of why bands like Tough made it. Rat. I mean, you know, Rat, who knows if they make it, if their videos with Milton Berle don't, you know, aren't all over that channel. You know, you guys certainly were, came on toward the tail end of the era, but like, you know, you guys were darlings of MTV for a bit. I mean, even Kiss, Bon Jovi.
Well, and even, you know, that Psy, that Korean rapper that did Gangnam Style, which, I mean, there was no denying the hook of that song and the craziness of the video and the, you know, the samples or whatever they did. And the guy definitely had some type of a charisma that just transcended. I mean, this is a dude that's basically from a country completely outside the, you know, the comfort zone for America. I mean, there's been some Australian bands that have broken, some English bands and some German bands and maybe a Brazilian bands, or maybe one or two from Japan and a star here or there from other select countries, you know, ABBA from Sweden. But for this guy to come out of Korea and then put out that song, which of course, and then when people came to realize it's like, he's been around 10 or 15 years. It's his like 7th studio record. But that song just exploded beyond anybody's, you know, thought process, you know, and 1 billion views on YouTube. And it's just a different world. It's a different world than when we grew up listening to Foreigner or Bob Seger on the radio in the Midwest. And I say that for me being from Wisconsin and growing up and hearing, you know, those songs, or Rush or Triumph, and then something crazy would come on like in the early mid 80s, like Quiet Riot or Twisted Sister, and then Motley Crue. And suddenly it was just, you know, it progressed and continued to grow. And I think that for young artists, you know, there's still a ceiling that will be met that, you know, we haven't seen yet.
Well, I mean, Quiet Riot's another example of, if that video for "Come On, Feel the Noise" isn't so massive, do they pop like they did? And
right,
you know, certainly Motley Crue, those bands really lucked out of just the right place, right time. They were visual. This new visual medium had just kind of just exploded.
Right.
And a band like the Cars, who I love, the Cars.
Great band.
But they were probably the most innovative video savvy band. I mean,
yeah, and it's another great example of like where Rick Ocasek was not, it did not look like David Lee Roth, you know, or didn't look like David Bowie or Billy Idol, or even you know, Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran. He was a gooky, geeky, quirky looking, tall, skinny dude.
Now for
that.
Oh, Jesus, I got hard to do this. Geez, hold on here.
What kind of pile up you got?
You just turning on the Facebook Live. This is Stevie Rachelle, singer of the band.
You're a mess.
Tough. And this is his website, Metal Sludge at metalsludge.tv. It's
metalsludge.tv or metalsludge.com or metal-sludge.com. There's a whole bunch of domains and they all go to the same place pretty much. Just Google Metal Sludge and you'll find us.
It's hard to I felt like the drummer from Def Leppard there for a second, just trying to juggle some things. Stevie Rachelle, one of the greats in the music business. I mean, an entrepreneur
Greats?
to end all entrepreneurs. I mean, of the 80s metal, 80s rock scene, you are one of the few still making a living doing it.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, between Tough and the Cheeseheads and Metal Sludge and Shameless, and I got involved with a new project out of Brazil called Tales from the Porn, which is kind of a weird name, but it's all Brazilian guys. They recorded a record. I'm singing on it. At one point, I'm thinking in probably early 2017, I'll be in Brazil and doing some shows, and not just Brazil, but South America. They've talked about like going to, I guess, Argentina or maybe Venezuela or some other obscure countries for me at least, down in South America, and some multiple shows in Brazil, like Sao Paulo and Rio. And I think there's a city called like Belo Horizonte or something, probably pronouncing it wrong, but I look forward to that. And all these musical ventures together collectively help me put food in my plate, which I'm on a diet right now and I'm starving.
You look great. Yeah. No, I got a meeting to go to.
And so I bid a farewell to my Facebook friends.
This is Facebook Live. Please go to Metal Sludge if you are a fan of not just 80s rock, because they cover other genres, but it's primarily
crazy stuff. It's like TMZ stuff that we kind of pinpoint that. And when somebody does something completely off the wall, we usually are there to highlight it, just because that's usually what draws attention. People want to see crazy stuff.
You can see on the front page right now, there's a great article, if you like Cinderella, on Jeff LaBar, where he speaks of the status of the band, the Nelson Twins' emergency landing on an airplane, Vince Neil and Bret Michaels, Stephen Piercy, breaking news signs to Frontier Music. So if because listen, let's be honest, there's not a lot of websites. There's not a lot of people, radio shows. I mean, I'll plug Eddie Trunk because he carries the torch.
He does. He obviously has a big brand, and it's funny. We actually interviewed Eddie way long time ago. He was on doing, I want to say it's like WDHA or WHDA or something, some kind of a small radio outlet that he was doing, a Saturday night show or something for years. But he's obviously been involved from, I think he worked with Megaforce Records, and he was, not only just a fan of Kiss, but then got involved in helping other bands and promoting them. And now he's launched himself to another level with the TV show and the radio stuff and all related.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was responsible for getting Ace Frehley his deal on Megaforce.
Yeah, I think there's some history there.
So Facebook Live, guys, I know you wanted this shot. Stevie Rachelle, metalsludge.tv, metalsludge.com. Where can they, we'll just do it this way. Where can people find you on Twitter?
At Stevie Tuff on Twitter, at Stevie Tuff on Instagram, which is STEVIE and then TUFF, because we don't spell it like they do in the dictionary. And if you just Google Stevie Rachelle or Tuff, TUFF, I mean, we're on every social network. The same goes for Metal Sludge, at Metal Sludge. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, eBay, Amazon.
Craigslist, Backpage in the body rub section.
No, not on there. But
just kidding, guys. Just kidding.
Pinterest. I actually started posting stuff on Pinterest. I don't really know how that works. It's like put it in a group like, hey, buy vinyl records. Okay, we'll buy the Tough Decadation vinyl record. So people have been saying, why are you going to put a vinyl record out? Well, we put one out. So find it on eBay. Tough Decadation. Google it, search it, and buy one. And I'll sign it and send it to you.
And Stevie's the best and fastest shipping in the business. So, support it, like Eddie Trunk, like myself, support someone who carries the banner for a genre of music that has a big fan base, but for whatever reason, mainstream media doesn't seem to
give a shit,
embrace it. They moved on to, Kanye West and all that stuff.
Pardon my language.
That's all good. I mean, listen, it bums me out that some of these bands don't get more love. Shark Island, thank you, Richard Black, very much for, keeping the drum beat alive for that band. And I think there's a concert coming up, a secret show. I'm getting my info via Dean Del Rey, who had Richard on his podcast. So Let There Be Talk. So check out Dean Del Rey's podcast. He's one of my mentors. And
I know Dean Del Rey. I've known him a very long time. I met him at the Omni in Oakland or the Stone in San Francisco many, many years ago.
Once again, many people would think me and Dean are not enemies, but competing. But
right.
He really helped me out a lot. Same thing with my show Roast Battle on Comedy Central. People think that I don't like Jimmy Carr.
You were great.
But Jimmy Carr's awesome. We're good buddies. We're not, but well, he lives in the UK. But check out Roast Battle on cc.com. All the clips are up there. And Stevie Rachelle's, he's been with me on this podcast literally from day one. He's provided the music for every single episode, and he's given me a lot of love on his website. And so I'm loyal to people who are loyal to me.
And vice versa. You've done the same for us and for me and for the related. Thank you, Earl.
Well, I mean, us fans of this music, and you and I are similar. You certainly have achieved more success in the music business than I have in comedy, but I think we respect each other. And
I did see one of your very first stand-ups at like a sandwich shop off Riverside, and that had to be at least 12 years ago.
That was
15 years ago.
For those of you who have followed my career, and let me see, we got some interrupting feeds here. You will know that I started doing comedy in the Valley Village at a speed, I don't want to say freak, but people who were recovering from speed. There was a coffee shop called the Hot Wired Cafe where Calico Cooper.
Did Happening Harry help promote that?
No, I was good on that help. Happening Harry, nor the Haptones, nor Victor the Snake Man.
But I went to some of those earliest ones. I remember.
Because of my girlfriend at the time, the great Shelley Berggren, co-manager of Motorhead.
And our Tufts former agent at Tapestry Artists way back, like 1988.
And she also, I think they still, Singerman Entertainment, I think they still manage. We talk a lot about bands who should have been huge. I always wondered why Shark Island wasn't bigger. I mean, this is another podcast, but Singerman Entertainment, I think, still represents this band called Zebrahead.
Right.
And they were in that lit...
Orange County.
They were in that lit vein.
Sugar Ray, Everclear kind of.
And they had I think their shot at stardom, they had a song called Playmate of the Year. And it's really poppy and catchy. Video done at the Playboy Mansion, hot girls everywhere. And,
bummer.
It's just weird. But I'm obsessed with a boy band right now. And I get nothing by plugging these guys.
Who is it?
I've asked every single member to come on this podcast. They've rejected me, but nicely. I will say this. There was a band, came out about 2005, 2006, called the Click Five.
Never heard of them. I'll have to Google it.
Please do. They were a boy band. They wore suits. They could play their own instruments. They were like the Cars meets, like the Backstreet Boys. But I swear they were amazing. Paul Stanley wrote a song for them. Elliot Easton did the solo on the song Paul wrote.
From the Cars?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
The song's called An Angel in You, A Devil in Me. And, it sounds like something that would, Desmond Child would write. And it just, for whatever reason, they didn't hit. They didn't
click.
They were kind of like tough. They had a couple videos on MTV.
They didn't click.
The Click Five didn't click. There you go.
Thank you.
Stevie's getting into comedy.
Thank you, Drive Thru.
My solo album, The Earl Skakel Invasion, will be out with Bobby Rondelli on drums, and I'm just really delving deep, guys. Inappropriate Earl, SoundCloud and iTunes. Follow Stevie Rachelle,
Thank
Metal
you.
Sludge, and Stevie will be back for more.